Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. This is the post-fight review for the Carlos Takam and Jerry Forrest fight in Las Vegas. A win for Carlos Takam by unanimous decision. The scorecards were sort of all over the place. You had Dave Moretti with 98-92. Not for the first time Moretti has scored wide in these bubble cards in Las Vegas for the home fighter. And the other judges 96-94. And 97-93. And on my card, I had it to Carlos Takam, either 96-94 or 97-93, which I tweeted prior to the cards being put out. But this was a fight where it was a bit all over the place, and we saw a couple of different versions of Carlos Takam and a lot of disappointing effort from Jerry Forrest. It really was a fight for the taking for Forrest, especially in the second half of it. Carlos Takam, he suffered a cut over his right cheek, which was clearly giving him a lot of issues. It was from the second or third round onwards. And from that point on, he was pouring at it, and as the fight wore on, there was more swelling there. It was apparent that he couldn't see left hooks coming in, but Jerry Forrest, unable or unwilling to take advantage. It was a fight that started off with some very smart tactics by Carlos Takam, who many of us thought would be burrowing forward, bringing the pressure and bringing the fight to Jerry Forrest, who many of us expected, as in previous Jerry Forrest fights, would be the one who would be on the move and using his boxing skills. But instead, the reverse was true. Carlos Takam was standing off in the first couple of rounds. He was using his 80-inch reach, and he was trying to tag Jerry Forrest coming in. And he was having a lot of success. The first couple of rounds, clear Carlos Takam rounds. But it's got to be said, after about the third round or so, Carlos Takam, his output, it visibly and noticeably dropped, and it became a fight where between about rounds 3 and 6, there wasn't a lot actually happening. Some very close rounds where it sort of depended on what you liked. And most of those rounds in the first 5, I gave to Carlos Takam. The winning of the fight, it came in those first 5 rounds where Jerry Forrest, especially in the first 2 or 3 rounds, was just outthought. Clearly he wasn't prepared for a Carlos Takam who was sort of sitting back and sort of pot-shotting Jerry Forrest, who didn't necessarily look all that comfortable tracking forward and bringing the action and aggression to Carlos Takam. But not only that, Forrest went away from his jab, and he has a good jab. He went away from it in this fight. He was really looking and falling in love with his power shots, especially the left hook early. And it's ironic that the left hook, which he was looking for so much in the first half of the fight, he didn't really look for as much or more in the second half of the fight, when he probably should, when it was clear Carlos Takam was slowing down and Carlos Takam was having trouble seeing what was coming from that side of his face. So it should have been a situation where Forrest was exploiting Carlos Takam. And although it was 98-92, 96-94, 97-93, but I still think this was a performance where Carlos Takam showed all of his age, being 39 years old. He had 3 good rounds, and after that, it was, it was a pretty average performance for the most part. There was a lot of scrappy and not much of anything type of action for a number of rounds. Sort of rounds 4 to about 7 or 8, there wasn't really much happening. Neither was really doing too much or landing too much of note or throwing anything that was connecting where you sort of thought, oh, that's won the round. Some of those rounds were close and they were tight, and I think heading into the final round, Andre Ward on the broadcast had his card where Forrest was only 1 point down, and that was how sort of mine was looking. But there was another round or two where it was very close. But as I say, I did have Takam winning this. My pre-fight prediction was I thought Jerry Forrest would box his way to a decision, but he went away from that. Carlos Takam put him sort of off his game plan early on, and he never sort of came back to it. And by the time he sort of started to throw some punches and show a bit more urgency, it was a bit too late, and he never really went for broke, even when his corner said to him for the final round, go for the knockout. And it was a pretty sort of, lame affair in that final round. There was no real urgency from Jerry Forrest. It was a opportunity that was missed for him. He was the younger, fresher guy. What was he, 32 years old? He had a chance on this headline event to prove that he deserved to be in the conversation, but he fell short. He was outthought early on, but then ultimately he just didn't do enough. So whether his conditioning was also an issue, because clearly Carlos Takam, one, he was having issues with that cut over the right cheek, which sort of his face was swelling up, giving some issues, but also Takam's conditioning sort of started to give out in that second half of the fight, lower output, and he wasn't doing a whole lot. So I think Forrest, it really was a missed opportunity, although he did come back into the fight in that second half, but it wasn't enough. So it was a strange old fight, I'll say that much. But in terms of the what next, after the fight, Carlos Takam in the post-fight interview said that he wants either Tyson Fury or Oscar Rivas. Now, Oscar Rivas was the guy that Takam was originally meant to fight on this very card. He was taken off it after Oscar Rivas was injured. He had arthroscopic surgery on his right elbow, so that date ended up falling to Forrest and Miller, but with Miller going out for obvious reasons, Takam came back in. So he got the win. He wants the Rivas fight, but I would totally be picking Oscar Rivas in that fight. They're almost a mirror of each other in terms of, you know, the height and being heavily muscled. Even their styles are somewhat similar, but Rivas, the younger, fresher man. I think Carlos Takam, if he sort of does fade and have those lower volume rounds in the second half of a Rivas fight, Rivas would ultimately win those rounds and sort of either get a late stoppage or a comfortable decision. I think Oscar Rivas is a cut above Jerry Forrest, and that's been proven by his fight with Bryant Jennings, for example, going the distance with Dillian Whyte, dropping Whyte in that fight. But Carlos Takam, he is, at this point, a gatekeeper at best. He is not going to be vying for a heavyweight title again. He looked at times in that fight, all of his 39 years old. It was a gutsy effort, a scrappy performance, a decent win. But there's levels, and Jerry Forrest proved that he's not on the level to contest with the best in the heavyweight division. And it's a shame for his part, because probably now he will drop back down to a level to somewhat of obscurity where he'd largely been fighting for the past 5 or 6 years, save for 1 or 2 times when he's sort of stepped up and lost. It was a missed opportunity. Forrest, he does have decent skills, but he couldn't put it together. He was outthought early on and didn't throw enough punches. If he had have thrown a lot more punches and been a bit more accurate, sort of worked over that sort of right cheek area with that left hook a bit more in the second half of the fight, could have been a different result, could have at least been a draw. There were some rounds there towards the end. He just didn't do enough. So disappointing for him, but Carlos Takam moves on. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.